Hello, everybody. It's good to be here again with another webinar, and we are doing this weekly. I'm here every Tuesday. You just heard about Leverage Edu and the series that we are building up. All the series is going to be eventually curated and available on Leverage Edu TV. So today we chose to speak about liberal arts colleges. First of all, I find that very often there's a lot of confusion about people talking about it. Is liberal the opposite of conservative? Is it liberal art? Is it art college? Is it arts colleges? Is it liberal arts education? So I want to first work with that terminology to say that we are speaking here about liberal arts education. Liberal arts education is really what it says, that it's about a broad range of subjects which are to do with liberal arts. The arts, the S at the end is important because it's not about fine art. It's about arts, liberal, broad-based, and is the opposite of hyper-specialization. So that's the first thing to remember, that liberal arts education is actually a concept. I want to tell you it's not really a new concept. Before we began speaking about hyper-specialization, are you taking science, arts, commerce? These are all hyper-specializations because even though there are other subjects that people do, they just have no importance. So what happens is people just end up either studying history or tech or engineering or just medicine. And it's not broad-based because a student who is studying medicine is most unlikely to have done a course in economics or in history or in media or in communications. And similarly, somebody who has done economics may have done a course in math, but most likely not something in a pure science. So liberal arts education is that broad-based concept of education. Why is it relevant today? It's relevant today at many levels. First of all, in the last 2 decades, there has been a lot of importance that recruiters have attached to students who come with a broad-based liberal arts education. For those of you who might be thinking of medicine, I should also say that in the US, for example, you can do medicine only after 4 years of a liberal arts college. You may be doing pre-med, but you do 4 hours of a liberal arts education, and you do courses in a variety of different subjects before you actually go to med school. So it is considered that important. There are universities in India which are also promoting that. There's Kriya, there's Ashoka, there's Flame, there's other universities. So you will hear that term being used much more than it used to be. So I'm going to speak a little bit about what exactly happens at the liberal arts colleges. I want to say to you, based on my experience of having taught at 3 different universities in the US for several years, and also visited more than 40 universities as an invited speaker because of my research and my books, that the atmosphere in a liberal arts college is very different from that of a large university. Let me also say that all large universities in the US do have a College of Arts and Sciences. That's what they're usually called. But liberal arts colleges are very often private colleges, which are really small worlds unto themselves. Very often, they are in the suburbs. They might be 2 hours away from Philadelphia. They might be an hour away from New York. They might be an hour away from Atlanta. They might be 2 hours away from Dallas. They are scattered all over the US. And some of them have really fantastic reputations. But let me go back again and tell you a little bit more about this. Why is it so valuable? Why do recruiters think that a broad-based education is important? That's what I'm going to talk about. How does this broad-based education actually work? Well, you have to do a major and you have to do a minor. But it's not like what we do at Delhi University, which is you have an honor subject and you do subsidiaries which really don't carry much value. No, you have to choose. You can choose 2 majors which actually don't seem to have any connection at all. For example, you could be doing courses, a major in economics, along with a major in media, which really means that you would be doing courses on media and communication and economics. What does that mean? That you understand both sorts of disciplinary areas. For your minor, you could be choosing a math paper, you could be choosing a film studies paper, you could be choosing a history paper. How does that work? Well, usually most colleges will offer you a chance a choice from one of 7, 8, or 9, or 10 majors that you can choose from, and at least 20 minor subjects. The way it is built, you have to choose a variety, one from social sciences, one language, one some, different categories, a course in literature, perhaps, a course in language. What does that do? Even if you're going to be an economist, you're able to read and write well. You have critical thinking. You have an understanding of history. You're not just an economist in a vacuum who understands theory, but you understand how historically economies develop. You will be able to talk about them in a particular way because you will have understood different aspects of what involves economies, maybe public health, maybe labor laws, different things. So it usually is a combination of major and minor subjects. And basically what it does is it has a multifaceted approach. So your professors are going to be specialists in a variety of different areas. So from each one, you get a very different perspective. What does this do? It takes the emphasis away from information. When we study in traditional ways, it's really about what. What do you know? What is the information? This is about how. It's about why. You are prompted to ask difficult questions. You get multiple perspectives, historical perspectives, perspectives from economics, from literature, from art, from a variety of different subjects. You might have to do one lower level science subject as well. So that develops your analytical mind. It develops a certain humanistic approach. And what it does is, it makes you broaden the way that you think. Your intellectual abilities are not in a tunnel vision. They tend to be broader so that you can delve into different aspects of your own brain and the knowledge that you have gained of different perspectives. What is the reason for this? I'm going to speak to you a little bit later, more and more about this, but basically imagine a liberal arts education to be something like a very fancy buffet. You can mix and match the subjects that you want and play around. Maybe you're not sure how much you love economics. Maybe you'll find that you actually want to study something else. Maybe you want to study a few subjects in law and you want to study film. And who knows, you might become an entertainment lawyer and a lawyer specializing in entertainment law. That is a question that most parents and most students do want to think about. We love to have education for the sake of education, but we also know that it must get us somewhere. Okay, so I want to say that this past year has taught us what we sort of knew, but we were not so sure. People were talking about disruption. Remember how in the 80s, there were lots of kinds of work that seemed to disappear. For example, when you would go to a fancy tourist area, there would be photographers. There's no job for photographers anymore. All of us are photographers, right? There was a time that there was videotapes being produced. They were being manufactured. There were jobs in that area. Who even thinks of that? We came to CDs and we've come to streaming. We don't even have any of that. Gradually, offices are becoming paperless. Teaching is happening online. Telemedicine is happening online. We don't really know where this is going to go. Are we going to need fewer teachers? Are we going to need fewer lawyers? Are we going to need fewer medical doctors? We don't know. We don't know what AI will do. We don't know what machine learning will do. How many human beings are going to be replaced? Okay, so the long and short is the jobs towards the end of the 21st century, we don't know what they're going to be. So we can specialize, and maybe those specializations are not needed anymore. So what is going to be needed? We don't know what qualifications we'll need, but we certainly know one thing. We're going to need good minds. We're going to need minds that are adaptable. The last 2 years, what did we learn? We thought it's going to be a few months, then we thought it's going to be only 2020, and we are halfway through 2021. And we know that we need to be adaptable. We need to be flexible. We need to be innovative. When we can't go to a class, we need to know how best we can be productive with online remote learning. Similarly, there are going to be many, many changes that we don't yet know. to train a labor force of professionals who are adaptable, flexible, who have analytical skills, who are able to use critical thinking, who are able to see new problems and become problem solvers. You can do this only if you have a multifaceted, multidisciplinary education. So that is where I see the importance of liberal arts colleges. I actually want to quote something from the new education policy. I came across that and I thought I should read that out to you. The NEP 2020, which is a Government of India document, says, and I quote, "A liberal arts education enables one to truly develop both sides of the brain, the creative and the analytical side." Okay, so both the creative and the analytical. That is what is going to create people who are going to be problem solvers of problems that might just crop up. We don't even know them yet. So I want to say that when you're looking for a liberal arts college, the first thing to do is think about your interest areas. Think about, just Google and type and say, which is the best liberal arts college for economics, for media, for whatever. You might find that your choices are determined by that. That's your first step. The second thing I want to say is, because the US is huge, and that's why I'm speaking only about the US, because it is really a huge place with very, very different kinds of educational models that are available. And the next thing you need to know is, do you want to live on the East Coast or the West Coast? The East Coast is New York, Philadelphia. New York is a huge state. It starts from where you know New York to be and goes all the way up to the border of Canada. So you need to see where you want to be. So that's the East Coast, moving on to New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and so on and so forth. Ohio, and then you come into Middle America. Are you interested in Middle America? Do you want to go to Texas? Do you want to go to Arizona? And then you come gradually on and on towards the West Coast, which is California, Seattle, so on and so forth, Los Angeles, and so on and so forth. So your first thing is going to be, where do you want to live? The climate and geography are very, very different. If you fly to the West Coast, you will go from the Pacific. If you fly to the East Coast, you will go via Europe and the Atlantic. So you need to decide, because we are far away from there. So you need to figure out where you want to be. So your courses are the first thing. The location of the college is the second thing. Then I also want to say that actually many of these liberal arts colleges have very, very good funding available. And that's something to think about, because large universities don't very often have good scholarships for undergrads. But liberal arts colleges are committed to diversity. They really want international students. And many of those colleges have large chunks of South Asian students, 150 South Asian students who will be looking like us. And you might feel more comfortable being there. So I want to say that then you should also look at, do they have funding or do they give priority to international students? And I've also discovered over time that the more far away or less known the colleges, the more likely that they will give you a really good funding. So remember that that's important too. Secondly, check out which is the closest city, what is the cost of living? Because you may be in the dorm the first year, but by the second and third year, you might want to live in an apartment a little bit away from the college with friends. A lot of people do that. Then you'll want to know what the rents are like, what is the cost of living. And that's a very important question to think about when $1 is equal to, 90 something rupees or 80 or whatever that is. So I want to say those should be the reasons that you first look at. The second thing is, you will need 5 or 6 in mind as possible choices. And that's when you need to approach counseling to be able to see from other people's experience, which are likely to be the easiest for you to crack. So this is broadly how I look at the broad issues. Absolutely. You can do, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, you can do a double major in a variety of different options. In fact, you are encouraged to do that. And the best part is you might start off. I used to have students in the US who would start off and say, I'm actually an economics major, but I've taken world history courses and international affairs courses and politics. And I actually want to be a major in international affairs. And so, you get a chance to make up your mind to find where your aptitude is. While it is true that we choose options which are going to have very high employability, it is also true, and students would know this, it's also true that we do well in things that we enjoy. Just remember your favorite teacher and your favorite subject, very often they go together. Very often you fall in love with a subject because the person who was teaching it was so influential. So think about what you like, sign up for those majors, but it's not written in stone. You will be able to change your mind. You will be able to modify that choice. And they let you do that. You don't need to decide your major in the first year or even the second, even towards the second year, which is called the sophomore year. There's a freshman year, there's sophomore year, there's junior year, and there's senior year. And you graduate at the end of senior year. I forgot to tell you that liberal arts colleges typically have a 4-year degree program. Within those 4 years, I've known many students to be able to finish many of their courses by doing summer courses and finish them early. I've also known students who are almost finished with their credits in 3 years, and then they request to do a master's. So within 4 years, they do a single major and a master's. So that's a big money saver, and it also leads to great employability. So I hope that answers that question. So in some ways, I already answered that question. And I think so much is going to depend upon where you go to make that choice. I also want to say that, you make a choice, you choose a degree. It's best to think a little bit hard about that degree. I also want to say that liberal arts colleges, because they are not huge in terms of numbers, you will be delighted to see that you might be 20 people in a class, you might be 10 or even 8, and you get so much individual attention from your professors. And the advice I would give you for that is, by the end of the first year, start looking around to see the professors that you have been with in class and start going to them for advice about internships. Ask them if you can do some research internships with them. This is how you make connections and networks. By the end of the 4th year, you become really a part of that student body. And there's a lot that you can do to use those networks even later. So very often students work along those lines and actually build excellent profiles for themselves while still in college. You're not just getting a degree, you're getting a broad-based exposure. You're building amazing networks with professors who will write you letters of reference much later. I've been writing letters of reference for people even 7-8 years after they stop being in my class. Every semester, you do a different course and you meet a different professor. This is your chance. This is not so easily possible in a very large university, because when freshmen go to a very large university like Emory or Duke or Yale, you are one of thousands of people. And those are universities that really specialize in grad programs and PhDs in research. I'm not saying that undergrad education is not good. It's great to have a label. But let me tell you, the kind of nurturing that you get, solid investment in your education, really happens at the liberal arts colleges. Because very often the faculty are also not running around in 10 different directions. They live close to campuses. Life is not at such a high pace, and they are able to spend time in grooming you and nurturing you. So I have a lot of good things to say about liberal arts colleges. I have been part of big universities. I've also been at liberal arts colleges, and I used to wish that if I'd had the chance, I would have gone to a liberal arts college. We have looked at some of these issues. Your specialization is something you need to think about, because before you come into a counseling session, if you have thought a little bit about it, it's going to be so much more productive for you. And while we're on that, I want to tell you that at Leverage Edu, you have access to a 30-minute free counseling session. You don't have to sign up until you've had that session, and you can avail of that. All our details are available on the Facebook page, on Insta, and you will find myself also somewhere on the social media. I'm on LinkedIn. We encourage you to get in touch with us. So I will say thank you and bye-bye to everybody who has logged in, and feel free to send us your queries. Delighted to answer anything you have to ask. Thank you.